Age shall not bury them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
It is the soldier, not the minister, that guarantees us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, that gives us freedom of speech. It is a soldier, not the poet, that guarantees us freedom of press. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, that guarantees us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, that guarantees us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, serves beneath the flag, and whose casket is draped by the flag, that allows the protester to burn the flag. My name is Sergeant McVicker. I'm with the North Saskatchewan Regiment. It's an infantry unit in Saskatoon. I've been serving for 10 years now. I've deployed on domestic operations, forest fires in BC, floods in Manitoba, participated in Arctic sovereignty in the Arctic, as well as deployed on Task Force 108 to Afghanistan, where we fought the Taliban. And it's a pleasure to be here to speak to you guys. On any given day, the men and women of the Canadian Forces can be called upon to aid communities, patrol our borders, and work together with other nations to forge a more peaceful world. No matter where we come from, no matter what we believe in, there's at least one thing in common: the desire to be free. But at what price are you willing to pay for that freedom? Those with the strength to defend us have a moral responsibility to do so. Today we remember the men and women of the Canadian Forces who have put themselves in harm's way to save others. Here we stand to honor those who we've lost along the way and those who have been left behind to carry on their work. Here we stand to celebrate the sacrifices that have purchased our future. As we remember the hundreds of thousands of men and women who have served this country in times of conflict, let us not forget the thousands more that continue to serve us in times of peace, on land, at sea, and in the air. They are our fathers, our brothers, our uncles, and our cousins. They are our mothers, our daughters, our friends, and our neighbors. No matter where Canadian soldiers have gone, whether it be across the desolate deserts of South Africa, the muddy mires of the European battlefields, the battered beaches of France, or the turbulent waters of the North Atlantic, Canadians continue to hold true to the belief that all people should be afforded the right of life, freedom, and security without fear. This belief, along with the knowledge that the sacrifices will be remembered, continue to inspire our forces to hold battle lines, to capture enemy strong points, endure hardships, and to achieve the objectives critical to the end goal: peace. To forget the actions of these brave Canadians would be to forget our own past and to deny our place and our responsibilities in today's world. Thus we remember them. The veterans of the past and the veterans of today, together let us celebrate the qualities that make us a great nation that stands up to defend the weak, and take pride in the accomplishments of our soldiers. Over the years, the Canadian military has become known for its fighting spirit. Evidence of this fighting spirit existed before we became a country, when the diverse populations of settlers and aboriginals came together to repel an American invasion during the War of 1812. This year is the 200th anniversary of that war, and the military has donned a pin to symbolize our victory. And we'll continue to wear this pin for the next 3 years to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the World War's end. That same fighting spirit inspired Canadians 95 years ago during the Battle of Vimy Ridge in April of 1917. That battle earned us the reputation of the Allied forces' shock troopers. Through enemy fire, past razor-sharp wire, and over treacherous terrain, Canadian forces pressed on to achieve a victory that many had attempted and none thought possible, yet the Canadians prevailed. Some other points to remember or note about the Canadian Forces and our achievements. Canadian paratroopers were the first troops to land in Normandy. During the invasion of D-Day, Canadian soldiers were the only forces to achieve their objectives on schedule. In Korea, at the Battle of Kapyong, a single battalion of Canadians held the line while all others retreated and changed the course of the war. Canada represents 1% of the world's population. It conducts 10% of the world's peacekeeping. During the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, a division of Russian troops, 10,000 men, tried to take a district called Panjwai. In 2006, a Canadian platoon, 44 men, did so. Throughout Canada's history, there have been many stories of courage. It is not surprising, however, that there are many stories of courage to Canadian military. I'll now read you a detailed description of how a Saskatoon man, Sergeant Hugh Cairns, won his Victoria Cross. Sergeant Cairns was in charge of a platoon during the advance, about 300 yards north of Illinois. When he was advancing down the Mars Road, a machine gun opened up on his men from a house on the side of the street. The fire was coming from a window upstairs. Sergeant Cairns seized the Lewis gun and rushed into the house. Dashing upstairs in the face of fire turned on him, he killed the crew of 5 and captured the gun. The Canadian line advanced. It swung across the Mars Road to the south side, where in front of an old French cemetery they are held up again by fire from a strongly held machine gun post. Again, Sergeant Cairns rushed forward alone, firing his Lewis gun from the hip. He silenced and captured 2 enemy guns and taking 18 prisoners. Once more, the Canadian line moved on, routing the Germans from the houses and sending back scores of prisoners. On the outskirts of the town, in an old brick field, the advance was again stayed by a battery of field guns firing point blank, a large number of machine guns. Sergeant Cairns was wounded in the shoulder. Notwithstanding, he led a small party of men around the position and outflanked it. Working to his way within 75 yards of the gun, he took a careful aim and killed a large number of the enemy, causing 50 others to surrender. 7 machine guns, 4 field guns, and 1 trench mortar were captured. The objective was gained, and the line of railway to the city was consolidated. The 2 front lines of attacking companies had instructions to push out patrols to ascertain whether or not the enemy were evacuated and to gain other critical military information. Sergeant Cairns, accompanied by his lieutenant, with a small patrol, went to exploit Mallory, a suburb east of the city. Cairns noticed a considerable number of enemy in the courtyard, surrounded with buildings, and with his lieutenant alone, pushed forward to the gate, where they came face to face with 60 enemy. The Germans, seeing the 2 Canadians and the sergeant with his Lewis gun, put up their hands in order to. However, once they realized that Sergeant Cairns and his officer were alone, as the German officer came forward, he pulled his pistol and shot Hugh Cairns in the stomach. Sergeant Cairns immediately dropped to his knees and fired upon the German officer. The other Germans then took cover behind boxes and piles at the rear, began firing at the 2 Canadians. In spite of the fact that he received a fatal wound, Sergeant Cairns got his gun into action. Again, he was wounded in the hand and in the arm. But when bleeding and in great pain, he continued to operate his gun. Then another shot blew away the trigger of his weapon. 20 of the enemy ran forward to overpower him. Seizing his broken gun, he hurled it in the face of the nearest enemy, then retreated back behind the gate wall. In a moment, the remainder of his section came running forward to the courtyard, and a skirmish took place, during which his lieutenant pulled the insensible hero back, placing him on a door to use as a stretcher. During the evacuation, he yet again came under fire, killing the stretcher bearer and wounding Sergeant Cairns yet again. Sergeant Cairns lived back for the next following day and made it back to the field hospital. He died the next day. Prior to the engagement of this day, the superior officer suggested he not go into action, as he had seen a great deal of fighting in the days before. He refused to leave his brothers alone. Flashing forward to now, of the 40,000 Canadians who have served in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2011, 158 servicemen and women have died. And even today, Canadian forces remain in Afghanistan, training the Afghan military and police so that they are ready to take security for their own nation. Personal story from me. In 2008, I served in Afghanistan. There was a young private there named Private Terry Street who died while we were there. And he was a bit of a poet. He, after he died, we were cleaning up his things and we went through his book and we found a poem that he had written. He was killed in Panjwai district, Kandahar province, Afghanistan, during a root clearing operation of a road called Foster's. After he died and we found the poem, we carved the poem into a timber of the bunker in the combat outpost that we stayed in. And after we had to leave the outpost, we cut the timber out of the bunker and brought it home to Canada. Now it's in Captain's Barracks in Shiloh, Manitoba. The poem reads, "While some men talk and give in to fear, we left our homes and all we held dear, to come and fight and meet our fate and remind the world, lest you forget, that honor and courage are not just words, but ways of life we proudly serve. So think long and hard as you walk by about the reasons for which we die. For on this ground the warriors stood, bought and paid for with our blood. When days are dark and you've had enough, think of what we gave.